I am Dr. Sam, and with me as always, my partner in crime, Robert. Dr. Robert, how are you?
Good, good. How are things with you, Sam?
Things are going well. I'm just getting over being sick, but I feel great today because we have a guest. Yay. We love having guests, and I'm really, really excited because this is kind of continuing on our foray into nutrition. And we have with us a board certified veterinary nutritionist, Dr. Did I say it wrong or did I say it right?
No,
No,
you said it
I said it
perfect.
right. Okay, good. I was being schooled in how to say that properly. So here we go. And this is Dr. Caitlin Getty. Welcome to the Pause It podcast. We're so happy to have you here. And I can't wait to talk more about nutrition. So I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm super excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Okay, so first thing we like to do is we like to kind of get to know our guests a little bit. So you need to share with us how it is you came to know our partner in crime here, Robert.
Oh, geez.
And then tell us your backstory. You got to give us your whole backstory.
So I know Robert because I was an intern at Premier Veterinary Group in Chicago, and he was one of the fabulous ER doctors during my intern year. And then we've run into each other at a couple conferences. We were able to catch up, and he invited me on this awesome podcast. And then my overall background. So, as you mentioned, I'm a board certified veterinary nutritionist. And so that started with becoming a veterinarian.
Mhm.
So I went to the University of Illinois for 13 years to do my bachelor's degree, my DVM, and my PhD in nutritional sciences. Did my internship, did my residency, spent a couple of years in the Freshland, and now I work for Hills Pet Nutrition.
Very cool. What does the
So
Freshland mean? What does that mean?
I worked in fresh food for 2 years, in fresh dog food for
Ah,
a couple of years before I came. Yep.
oh, I
Oh,
didn't
So
know
I've
that.
kind
So
of done a couple
that's
different things.
gotcha. So you have some insight into even just different types of pet food then that
Hmm.
like on a firsthand basis of working through one of those companies. Obviously, as a nutritionist,
Yes.
you know all of those things.
Well, and the cool thing too about even being a resident and practicing in nutrition is we make a lot of homemade diet recipes. We recommend a lot of different kinds of foods. And so that's one of the great benefits of being a nutritionist, is because we
Hmm.
get exposure to all of that, to try to pick the best things for our patients. And I
Hmm.
apologize if I look away. I've got little kitties running around.
You never have to apologize for kitties to us because we love when our guest stars come in and give us
Yes.
a little cameo. So you just have to introduce them as they come through, and then
Hopefully they'll get up
no
here.
problem.
But
I think it's so often you become a nutritionist because I think more and more owners now are asking those questions like, how can I provide better care for my pets and through their stomach, essentially. And it's such a powerful issue that I think Sam and I both run into. Sam probably more than I do, and
Yeah,
definitely Caitlin, you run into it all the time because that's literally what you
I
do.
do.
So I'm really excited to hear kind of more about your experiences there because I think it's a lot of, I'll say, misconceptions about nutrition. I think hopefully we can dispel some of them today.
So
for
did
sure.
you go into vet school knowing nutrition was your calling, or is that something you sort of found along the way?
So I was always interested in nutrition, and kind of the bachelor's program where I went was very nutrition and repro focused. We had big programs, and so those
Mhm.
were kind of the two things I was interested in. And then during the first couple years of vet school, I really came to understand that we could do a lot more with educating our vet students so that when they got out into the world, they could help dispel these kinds of myths and answer owner questions. And so that's
Mhm.
when I really got even more into nutrition, did my PhD with the goal of being able to educate vet students in nutrition when I got out. And
Wow.
so now I'm happy to do things like these kinds of podcasts and go to conferences and do education that way.
That's really fun. So do you get to go and kind of talk at conferences and,
Hmm.
some CU? That's so cool.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. It's one of my favorite things. I was terrified of public speaking when I was in grad school and undergrad. And I don't know what happened. I don't know if it's like you get done with your residency and all of a sudden you magically are okay with public speaking, but
Yeah.
I really love it now. So
Yeah. It's
Well, I
great.
think it helps when you know the knowledge, like the what you're talking about so well too, because like you are a
true.
specialist in knowing about pet nutrition, which is something that a lot of veterinarians aren't. Like I remember in our own education, Sam, I feel like our nutrition was very weak in terms of what we learned. So like I feel very unprepared when I came into the veterinary world to talk about it.
I
There's just
think
not enough
partly
time.
because of that, I always, even though I constantly am reading and constantly am trying to learn, and I almost always hit at least one nutrition lecture when I go to a conference. Usually, it can run the gamut from just like looking at ones that are specific to like a disease process, or ones that are specific, you know what I mean, that like maybe augment how I'm treating something, versus just like general knowledge stuff. And I still always like kind of second guess myself like all the time. You know what I mean? Like, am
I do too. It's okay.
Oh, okay, good. That makes me feel better.
Well, and everything's always changing too, right? Like
Right.
even, certain diseases we learned about in school, diabetes, for example, right? We learned how to manage it one way, and now there's new medications coming out, there's new foods, there's all kinds of things. So it's with everything.
Yeah, yeah. And I think too, the understanding of how completely the gut is the center of so much of our health, right? Like even
Oh my
in
God.
humans, right? And then expand that out to animals as well. But like the like gut biome is now like something people like just know to say. Like people
Oh yeah.
understand that as a thing, as an entity that they have to actually care for. And that isn't something that used to be, right? I mean, we
Mm-mm.
just knock everything out with antibiotics.
Well, and it interacts with so many things too, right? You've got your gut brain axis, your gut skin axis, your gut kidney. I mean, it's everything. And I
Mhm.
feel like when I was in grad school, it had like started to be big and then has just continued to build and build and build and expand over the past, and I'm going to date myself, but like 10 years,
Mhm.
maybe not
Yeah.
quite 8 to 10 years.
Yeah. Well, you were his intern, so you dated him too.
And now, well, I'm not really old. Thanks, Caitlin.
Well,
Okay.
that's okay because everyone knows I'm a decade older than him. So now you know it's all out there.
I was like, I think I might actually be older though, if I recall.
Oh, actually, I think you were older. Actually, I think that's funny. I think you are. I remember being like, "Yeah, I'm your intern director, but I think you're older than
Yeah.
that." So, do
That's
those
okay.
things.
We were in vet school together. I mean, it took me a minute to figure out which way I was going to go. But so I think one of the things, and I know you're here sort of representing yourself and your own philosophy on nutrition, not necessarily Hills per se. But I do think that it's really important to kind of have the perspective of like, sort of the big three, because I do feel like out there right now, and when I say that I mean like Hills, Royal Canin, Purina. I mean, I'm just gonna like that's the big three, right? So like
Generally, yeah.
and majority of the foods that are out there are going to be like your more run of the mill traditional like kibble, canned food sort of a thing. And I really think it's important to have a conversation about why that food is okay. Like why, because that right now, like as people are becoming more educated about what we were saying, gut health, biome, and all that kind of stuff, people are like, oh, I don't want that food. That's burnt, no nutrition, horrible, that stuff's crap or whatever. I hear that, all the time about kibble. And I feed my dog kibble. I am not, so obviously I'm not sitting here like needing to be myself convinced, but I do think it's really important that people understand why nutrition is okay in that form, I
Of
suppose.
course. And I
Just,
feed my
just a
cats
little
kibble
question
too.
for you.
Just a little teeny, teeny,
Just a
tiny
little
one.
tiny thing. Go ahead and explain that.
Okay. Um, that was adorable. I think one of the things, like, and this is, maybe outside of the realm of myths or things like that, people think about in terms of feeding the gut and all of the cool things that you can do with nutrition. One of the things that I think is really, really awesome with things like kibble, especially kibble, but canned food as well, is that you can take this little tiny format of food and put all kinds of really, really cool, influential ingredients in there, things like antioxidants and fiber bundles. If you look at the ingredients on some of these foods, you can see things like blueberries and carrots and apples. And when you can provide them in a form like this, where they're in a much more concentrated amount, you can get a lot more bang for your buck with those very cool ingredients than you would necessarily. I mean, you'll still get the bang for your buck if you're feeding them fresh, but the amount that you need to feed, and that's going to take the place of other things that they might need, or maybe unbalance the diet or things like that, but you can get it all in one form, and
Mhm.
it's in that very little form and very concentrated, and you can really, really tailor the amounts that are in there. And that's one of the things that I think is really cool about kibble is
Mhm.
it's this very concentrated little wonder nugget of food.
Mhm.
Oh, I like
A
that. Funny
wonder
name.
nugget. I like that. It's a
Wonder
lot
nugget.
better.
Launching my own brand. No, I'm just kidding.
Wonder nugget.
Well, I think that's a really good point, though, too. Like, not that our pet's health should be based on cost, but that's why we started myBalto. That's why we started, this podcast for a lot of reasons. But you can get a lot of the kibble goes a long way in terms of how long it lasts. Like you can keep it; it doesn't go bad necessarily as frequently as some other fresh foods do. And honestly, it's just far less. It's like far less expensive than some other options because like even I looked at some other like the fresh foods to feed my dog. It's ridiculous. Like it'd be like $400 to $500 a month sometimes.
I mean,
Uh,
Loki's not a small boy.
no, he's a little husky, but he's got some weight to him, but it's a lot. Like it's a lot of money, and like to still provide a good nutrition through a kibble is kind of a cool thing. I like the Wonder Nugget comment because I think it is a lot of nutrition in a little bite-sized piece.
And there's actually, if it's okay if I expand a little bit, there's
Yeah,
actually some
yeah, no, for
papers
sure.
out there too that look at the comparisons between kibbles and like therapeutic kibbles versus therapeutic fresh foods and things like that, or over the counters, and the prices are much less generally for certain things in the more concentrated food forms for exactly those reasons.
Hmm.
Makes
And I
sense.
guess like so what do you tell people when like because I mean to me it's marketing, right? When people are like, oh, the nutrients that are cooked out of food to make a kibble. I mean, isn't that sort of like the opposite of what you're feeding kibble because you're giving them nutrition? So I guess like how do you answer that when people ask that question? Like why is kibble not just burnt non-nutritious filler?
There's kind of two prongs to the answer.
Okay?
So the first one is you have to acknowledge that there are some nutrients that can be degraded by heat, right? And if you're going to cook a kibble, if you're going to can food, if you're going to cook even a fresh food, you're going to, destroy some of those. And so the foods are formulated to have extra levels of those nutrients that are kind of at risk. So I'm thinking things like that, thiamine, right? We're going to add more than we need at the beginning so that when some is destroyed at the end, we still have the amount that we need. And then the other end is that there are actually benefits to cooking some ingredients, right? Some starches become more bioavailable when you cook them. Meat, if it's cooked, is generally more bioavailable. It kind of depends on the cooking method. Um, and all of those goodies that are in there, right? Especially, I mean, I guess if we're going to talk like the big, considered more reputable companies or the bigger, more well-known companies is maybe a better way to put it. We're all doing testing. These companies are doing testing on the back end to make sure that what's going in, right, to try to get these awesome benefits, maybe to feed the gut, maybe for skin health, maybe for a sensitive stomach, things like that. All of those benefits that we want, we still have them on the back end, right? So
Right.
they're going through feeding trials, animals are eating them, we're seeing the benefits, and so we know that we're not losing them in the cooking process.
Right. So basically what you're saying is you take it into account for the benefit that cooking things at that level
Mm-hmm.
need to be, plus the benefit of shelf stability. So the amount of time it can be around for, and then safety, really.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Safety is a big feature. And actually the shelf stable thing is pretty cool too, because not only are the kibbles or the pates or stews or anything formulated for, longer term storage, but even things like the packaging and the antioxidants that are added and things like that. How it does, do you have to add, maybe some kind of gas to the bag, something like that, how you store it in the bag, all kind of come into play. And so it's more than just the food formulation. It's the entire, let's say the entire package, but it's the entire experience. It's the entire how the pet owner is going to be able to use the food.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, even my own dog's food, like I have it in a canister, but I have it in the bag in the canister for that
Mm-hmm.
reason, so that I don't lose those nutrients because the way that it was all designed was to be able to keep
Yes.
it safe and
Yes.
keep it from leaching out into plastic or whatever else. And I think that that's actually a really good point. I'm not entirely sure that I do a good job making sure owners are keeping their bags to do that. I actually just thought
So
about
many
that.
don't.
Yeah.
I don't.
You're doing it perfect.
Mine as I can, and the bag is gone as quickly as I get. I'm like, all right, dump it out, and it's in a plastic container. It's sealed and it's airproof,
Sealed is good.
like airtight, but still, it's I didn't know I should keep it in the bag, so now I'm going to start doing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
I
I
did a
actually
little.
I called and talked to them and asked them like what temperature to keep it at and does it have to be in the bag, because I knew, because my dog has like is on the sensitive skin and stomach, and so I know they have a lot more like omega-3s and I don't know, stuff that can leach out. That's what I know.
Well, and
And
can
so,
if it's exposed to air, it gets rancid and things like
yeah,
that. And yeah, and the bags are specifically made so that you keep the food in the bag. And then even better that you keep it in a plastic container, because who knows, what kinds of little scurrying things might want to chew through a bag.
right.
So you've got the double layer of protection.
Mm-hmm. See, there you go, Robert. You got to put your bag in the container with the thing
See,
on.
things I learn every podcast. I tell you, it's like I have to write these down like Robert's Nuggets. Robert's Wonder Nuggets. We'll just do that. You know,
There it is.
Robert's knowledge nuggets.
Ooh, knowledge nuggets is not bad. You can have like a little like an Insta channel or something like that.
Yeah.
yeah, that's all I need to be on social media more. That's that nonsense.
And so I guess the other thing too that I think I always struggle to explain to owners, mostly because I don't like to feel like I'm preaching to them, because people do come in very much with like their idea of nutrition. And so I sort of feel like I can like chip away at it when we're having a discussion, but I don't try to like come at them like a ton of bricks. But I think another big thing that with the kibble diets or with some of the like bigger companies and stuff like that, there is this dispute about ingredients like corn and filler, and it's just filled with junk, and it's like, okay, so I like to know how you sort of sort through that with people.
So I always kind of I like to start by asking them, maybe how they're feeling about it or where they got that kind of information, because you kind of want to understand their line of thought and how they understand these kinds of like misunderstandings and myths and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And once you get that, I mean, you can kind of start going into dismantling them, right? So people say corn, oh my gosh, it's so terrible. But corn is a really great source of essential amino acids, and it's got a lot of fiber in it, and it's got some really great minerals in there. And so it's actually a really great ingredient. Um, and as a cool thing, I don't know how many people know, but in like kibble, in order for it to keep its shape, it needs to have carbohydrates and fiber. And so corn also helps supply that so that you have those big kibbles that your dogs like.
Mm-hmm.
And then things like fillers, I feel like I think cellulose is a big one that people think about. They're like, oh, why would you put that in there? Oh my gosh, it's terrible. Cellulose is actually really expensive. So people aren't just putting it in there for fun. But it functions as a really great fiber source that can help, bulk the stool, draw in water, and really help improve stool quality. And is a big factor in things like weight management, weight loss diets to help those patients feel full. And so people aren't just putting it in there as a filler. It does have some really awesome properties, and it's in there for a reason.
Mm-hmm. I think that and the other one is like when they see like buy like chicken meal or like
Ooh.
byproducts,
Oh, I
and
love
like,
this one.
yeah, because like they're like that's not even real, and I usually like go right to the organ meat sort of like,
Sure.
so I'm curious what do you say when people say that?
So there's, because it's kind of like two or three questions, right? There's the chicken meal, and then there's the byproducts. And so chicken meal is kind of a fun question, because if you were to look at a pet food label and it were to say like chicken, comma, chicken meal, and chicken, it's all by weight, right? And so those two could theoretically have the same weight that's in the food, but you're actually getting more nutrients from the chicken meal because it's a dry product.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to have, again, all of those awesome essential amino acids and vitamins and minerals.
Mm-hmm.
But so when you're looking at the ingredient label, that's something to think about, is the water weight.
Mm-hmm.
And then the byproducts question. So yes, organ meats are a byproduct. So if you're going to go to the store and if you were to buy chicken hearts or chicken gizzards or chicken livers, those are byproducts because the birds are not being per se harvested for those. They're being harvested for the skeletal meat. But those have, I mean, so many vitamins, so many minerals, those byproducts do, and also the sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
People don't think about that, because if we're not using them, a lot of people don't choose to purchase those in the store. Maybe they didn't grow up eating them. Maybe they are not comfortable cooking them. And so we can use those in the pet food industry as super valuable sources of protein, super valuable sources of vitamins and minerals. Take that from the human industry and be able to use it, and we're not just throwing it away. So it's
Right.
actually very, very sustainable to be using byproducts in pet food.
Mm-hmm. Right. And also too, I mean, if you know anything, like, I mean, obviously I don't believe that our dogs are wolves. And I don't think that they're going, I mean, I don't think my lab is going to be able to survive in the wild on his own. But where do they go first? They go to the entrails. They
They
go
do.
to, right? What I mean? Like they go to the organ meat. That's the good stuff. That's the
Super
nutrient.
tasty.
Yeah, skeletal meat's got like a lot more water, like you said, than anything else. And so I wish, and I guess maybe there's a reason for this. I've always wanted to ask, why is it that nutrients are listed the way they are on a pet food bag? Like nobody who understands how to read a label for humans can then look at a pet label and go like, oh, I know how much carbohydrates are, like it's all by dry matter basis. Like you have to do math to figure out exact, you know what I'm saying? So like
Yes.
why do they put it in percentages? Why do they do that?
Oh, so
Tell
the
me why.
guaranteed analysis.
Yeah, yeah. I wasn't being,
So the
yeah, yes, the guaranteed.
No, it's okay. Oh, also this is Connor. If
Hi,
he oh
Connor. He's so
here, wait.
That's the
Oh,
beauty. It's
we
a
have to have like a
two-way
little
joke.
intro, and then we'll get back to guaranteed analysis. It's
Oh,
okay.
hello, kitty. Oh, is he a polydactyl?
No,
Oh, it looked for
he
a
just
second
got
like
big
he had
feet.
lots of extra. I thought he had extra.
No.
He's very cute.
So the guaranteed analysis is kind of a minimum number of like minimum reporting of the nutrient content of food. So really only in the guaranteed analysis do we have to have protein, fat, fiber, moisture, and then yeah, and then ash sometimes is it's one of those things. I'm like in my head, it's like okay,
Yeah,
wait.
you're like, wait, let me go down.
Um, and then carbohydrates is something you'd have to calculate.
Right.
And so that's really more of a regulatory thing. And
Oh,
so really, and so it's on dry matter because it's a way, well, on the food, on the pack, it's actually as fed, right? So this gets into the whole math you have to do, but dry matter versus as fed, right? As fed is what you're feeding the animal. And so on the pack, it's going to tell you what is, in that volume of food that you're feeding.
Okay.
Then if you want to compare apples to apples instead of apples to oranges, you have to get them both on a dry matter. Because if you think about it, a dry food that says it has 35% protein is going to look a lot higher than a canned food that says it has maybe 10% protein, but that canned, and the math could be off, but it's for example purposes, but the canned food has like 80% water. And so when you remove that water, it's going to shoot way up where the dry is maybe going to only go up to like 37, something like
mm-hmm,
that, because they're usually 12 to 15% water, maybe,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
maybe less than that. And so in order to compare accurately, it has to be on a dry matter basis. But also on the pack, right? Protein is a minimum, fat is a maximum, fiber is a maximum, moisture is a maximum. Now I'm going to look dumb and I can't remember but there's mins and maxes that they can be. And so it's not going to be necessarily the most nitty gritty kind of information. So for that kind of information, the best way is if you can get your hands on a product guide or ask your veterinarian for a product guide, or if you guys, have the product guide in clinic, to look at the caloric basis so you can
Mm-hmm.
really see and compare, and you'll get more nutrient information that way as well.
Right.
Because you'll have reporting for maybe 10 or 12 nutrients. And protein, fat, carbs, fiber, calcium, phosphorus, things like that. And so you'll be able to look across more. And some people have product guides, some people publish it on their website.
Yeah.
Depending on what you're interested in, you might have to call the company, which is another one of those kind of wasaba things, that calling up and asking, have someone to talk to
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
is important.
I think it's like I it always felt to me like somewhat purposeful to be that confusing because
I think it is.
you know, okay, that's good to know because because like people always will think that they can look at the guaranteed analysis and be like, oh well, this food has this much protein, and it's like, and like,
It's just
you
it's
know what I
just the
mean?
minimum,
Yeah.
right? And I'm looking it up now to make sure I'm not, because I'm feeling silly that I was like, which ones are maxes and which ones are mins. But the thing with the protein is like protein's also really, really expensive. So it's not you're not going to have a much higher level than what it says.
Mhm.
So if that makes any kind of sense. Like it's not going to be, if it says it's 35, it's probably not going to be 45.
Mhm.
But it
Got it.
could be,
Oh,
but it probably is not going to be.
wow. Yeah. I guess I just mean that that's how people sort of qualify how good a food is. And it's like
Which,
you're not, because they're used to looking at their own food labels and being like, oh, there's like 5 grams of protein in this. And it's not, do you know what I'm saying? Like, and those two things are not equal.
well, and that's actually interesting. And I don't know if you guys have heard, but the pet food labels are about to change.
No, I
Oh,
have not heard that.
And yes, so right now we have, you're like, oh, please tell me.
Please tell me
So
more.
we've got the Pet Food Modernization Act, and so right now we've got the guaranteed analysis, right, that has the four things. It's got the amount of kcals per cup, and
Right,
it's got the amount of kcals per kg on an as-fed basis.
right.
Now we're going to have a table that actually looks a lot more like a human label, where you're still going to have the guaranteed analysis is going to be in the first column. But we're going to change from having crude fiber to having total dietary fiber, which is cool because
That's
crude
very
fiber
cool.
mostly only gets at that insoluble fiber, and
Mm-hmm.
total dietary is going to get soluble and insoluble. So that's what we
Right.
use in the human industry is TDF.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the second column, it's going to have like I think it's going to be a per cup or a per can, but it's going to have it's going to extrapolate from the guaranteed analysis how much is in a serving, which we all know serving varies by animal.
Right.
But to kind of have like a more um, quantitative instead of like just percentages to try to help owners understand.
Yeah, and then I suppose it will be comparing apples to apples because all that work will be done for you, or no?
It'll still be on an as fed basis, and it'll
Okay.
still be on a like a serving size basis. So you might be able to add up, maybe how many grams a day the animal is eating if that's
Mhm.
what the owner's goal is. But as a nutritionist, usually we're more interested in things like I want the food to have 7 grams of protein per 100 kcals or something,
Right.
whatever the
Right.
range may be. And it's not so much about how much they're getting per day, unless you maybe had something like a shunty puppy and they're, have
Right.
encephalopathy and you really want to get that protein to where the animal can tolerate it.
Mm-hmm.
In that case, I think it makes a lot of sense. But from an owner perspective, it's going to be more approachable for them to kind of compare foods, at least on
Yeah.
a serving basis, because they'll be like, okay, well, a can has this much and maybe a cup has that much.
Right. 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 And I think that that's helpful too because I mean there are certain things where you know definitely fiber is something people will understand, fat content, especially when you have those ones like maybe have pancreatitis or have had, you know what
Sure.
I'm saying, and like because that's where I feel like it's come up a lot of times for me, and like people are like, well, I'm doing that, and I'm like, you know. So anyway, so
That's,
sorry, that was definitely a tangent. See, I told you, I was like,
oh,
sometimes we'll just.
but that's it kind of fits in though, because that's one of those pet food label myths too, right? Because people are like, oh, my pet has pancreatitis. I'm going to look for a low fat food. Oh, here's this can. It has XYZ percentage, but oh no, wait, we have to get back out to dry matter. And oh my gosh, it has maybe 20% fat on a dry matter basis. And we want it
Right,
to have like 10.
right.
So not too
Yeah.
tangential.
Yeah.
It
No, and
falls
but
right in.
I have actually had to do that with like some owners that do want to get that involved, and I had to be like, okay, but this is what you have to do. This is the math you have to do.
Yes.
And you
Yeah.
it's they can do it. It's not hard math, but it's just people don't realize it, and it's just that extra time to sit there and be like, hey, this is not how you are going to assess this food. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's definitely a challenge. I do a lot of math. That was
Yeah.
my residency was a lot of math.
Yeah. Do
well,
you
I do. Yeah.
with some of that like for critical patients, like figuring out how to refeed them, like things like that too?
Oh yeah. So
Yeah.
we did a lot of well my because I did my residency at NC State and we
Oh,
have a
that's
really
fun.
it's so much
I
fun.
used to live in Cary.
Okay. Oh my gosh, that's like right next door
Yeah.
and beautiful.
Yeah.
I used to go there for food all the time.
Yeah.
But but we had a huge ICU and a big critical care program, so we were
Mhm.
doing a lot of the math for like the liquid feedings and the feeding down an E-tube and things like that. But even for the wellness animals or the homemade diets or the weight loss consults, I mean the math on a weight loss consult, just so much
Yeah.
math. But
Oh, I
luckily
bet.
I like math
Yeah.
and I have a basic appreciation for Excel. So
It makes it a lot easier. Excel is the best thing that's ever been invented. Just streamlines everything.
I
simple
have to
math, it
say,
just does it.
your brother, his ability, he speaks fluent Excel. Like
Oh yeah, it's insane.
it's
Like he'll be like,
insane. His
he's like,
brother, I've never seen someone move so fast on Excel. I was like, I'm so confused about what just happened, but it's a beautiful spreadsheet. It would have taken me 3 days to do what he did in 3 minutes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I don't know all the tips and tricks. I am a functional Excel user.
Yeah.
across the board, you're good for it. So, but so, obviously you've worked with a lot of clients, and at least maybe a question we haven't asked any of our guests so far in this industry is, when should a owner seek out a
Ooh,
nutritionist? Like, when is a good
good
time for,
question.
because obviously, like, we have you as a resource as, a friend and a colleague, but like, when should owner be like, hey, it's the next step?
So definitely if they want to do a homemade diet, I definitely would recommend that they go work with a board certified veterinary nutritionist. Or there's a handful of websites run by veterinary nutritionists, but you got to be pretty choosy. Um, Again, one of those cases where there's papers that are like, you didn't go through a veterinary nutritionist, like 97% of the diets are unbalanced.
Right.
Um,
It's
yeah,
insane.
that face.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, I would say other cases, maybe if you have, um, if the pet has a really complicated set of diseases where you're looking at foods and you're like, okay, well, this food is good for one disease and this good food is good for another disease, but these foods look completely different.
Hmm.
Working with the nutritionist to kind of help either the veterinarian or work with the client to help pick an appropriate diet that's going to kind of weigh out both, right? So we did a lot of making lists of like, these are our problems and these are the nutrients that we care about and where do the levels lie. And so a lot of times I'm prescribing foods that aren't indicated for, you know, either it might be indicated for one of the diseases, but not like the other three that the dog has, or maybe it's not indicated for any, but it's a great compromise.
Hmm.
And so nutritionists often have more time and are in the product guides all the time and are much more familiar with kind of all of the foods.
Hmm.
So those really complex cases, um, owners that want to do maybe recipes or they want to try something that maybe the veterinarian's not comfortable with or hasn't heard of, or is going to be a lot of management that they just either don't have time or don't feel comfortable doing, but maybe a nutritionist might, have that in their back pocket, something like that. The other one I would say is like really complicated weight management cases,
Weight management.
because a
That's a good.
lot of the weight management is communication. And so if you can leverage your, healthcare team within the hospital, that's great. But a lot of places just don't have the time, and or maybe the animal has comorbidities that don't really align with the weight loss diet, or you have to be really, really careful. So we would
Right.
see a lot of those cases as well.
And I guess too, like I have had a few of those cases where, you know, it sounds like if the owner's telling me the truth, which I have to give them the benefit of the doubt that they care enough that they're coming to me
Oh, for
to try
sure.
to fix this problem. So they're not going to tell me, well, yeah, I'm only feeding my cat 125 calories a day, and somehow my cat went from 20 pounds to 24 pounds, and I still don't know why that's happening. You know what I'm saying? Like, then there's something, we're missing something there. There has to be
Right.
something else going on. And so, yeah, I think like there comes times where it's like we've tried the things that I knew to try. So, and I didn't realize too that if they, because there are places where you can go, I think right on the website for the College of Nutrition,
Hmm.
to get like individual contact information so people can reach out to nutritionists, right?
Yes. So that has actually shifted
Oh.
from, because ACVN, which is the American College of Veterinary Nutrition, let's see, what year is it? 2019, 2020, around there, merged with the American College of Veterinary Internal Medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have all shifted now being DACVIM as opposed to DACVN.
Mm-hmm.
And so now the specialists are listed. I think it's on the vet specialist website that's associated with ACVIM.
Okay.
And so I think the ACVN pages might still be findable if you have the backlinks, but I'm not sure how searchable it is anymore. And so now we got to go through the ACVIM. But yes, they can go on there and look up and find nutritionists.
Mm-hmm.
I think Sean Delaney runs a website. His is called Balance It, and it's like a homemade diet, and he's got supplements and a very cool website. But I think he maintains a list on there as well for clients.
Yeah, I will say that that's my I wasn't gonna say it unless somebody else said it, but that is my go-to when an owner says to me, "Well, I'm cooking for my animal," and I'm like, "Okay, I think it's great that you have the time to do that and you want to do that and you know you're really invested, but let's make sure we're doing it the right way." And so go on this website, you can put in all the things Fluffy loves, and then it's going to balance it for you, and then it's going to tell you what you're missing. And then the only thing they sell you is what is missing. And
Yeah, that's cool. He's
that's
done a great
balancing.
job.
I mean, it's a great it's a great website because I think it's very accessible. And once you figure out, like, you know, you put all the stuff in, it is very clear. It tells you exactly where you're at, what the cat or dog needs. Well, I don't know if it does cats, but it does dogs for sure. I don't know if
It
it
does
does.
cats.
Okay.
But it's that's one of those things where it'll do, relatively simple combinations of things and or healthy animals. But then when you get into those really, really complex cases is when you have to, for sure, make an appointment and work with a nutritionist live. But yeah, I use this website all the time. But he also maintains the list, so which I think is pretty cool.
I didn't even realize that that was on there because like I said, I tell people about it all the time
Hmm.
when I get to that point because I'm like, I cannot formulate a diet for an I know that I cannot do that. So I will never be able to tell you what to do. You need to go and talk to a board certified nutrition because I don't know. You know what I mean? So
Well,
you
and
did
it's
a lot of
it's a
extra
lot,
learning.
huh?
But I said you did a lot of extra learning.
Yeah. Well, I like school, so but that kind of it also kind of I guess brings me back to the commercial diets thing because homemade diets are really cool and sometimes they're the only option because the animal just has so many comorbidities. But the potential for changing the recipe or drifting off of things or any kinds of things, I'm always much more comfortable if I can have a commercial option that I'm going to
Yeah.
know what's in it and trust the option and like that the animal's going to be getting that every time the owner feeds them. um Homemade diets absolutely have their place. They do great things, but
Right.
I would always try to get them onto something commercial if I could.
Yeah. I
um
do.
but I mean,
And
even before I was in industry.
Right. Right.
well, and I guess maybe the elephant in the room, I won't make it necessarily answer it this way, but I think one of the big things is like, what is the best thing to feed your pet? Is it, fresh? Is it, home cooked? Is it a kibble? And instead of answering that question, do you feel like there's a consensus among nutritionists, like that you guys are all kind of on the same page a little bit, or is there even quite a bit of dissension between your colleagues about what the best option is for pets?
I don't know that there's agreement or disagreement. I think and this is kind of a joke among nutritionists and probably a lot of specialists, but the answer is largely it depends. And because there's a lot of factors aside from how the food's formulated, how it's produced, what the food form is. It's will the animal accept it? Is it a food formulation that suits their needs? Is it something that the owner feels comfortable with? And so there's a lot of things that go into choosing the correct diet. And it's definitely more than just food form. So it's an annoying answer, but the answer is it depends.
But it's an honest answer. And also too, I think what you said the first time is like consistency, right? I mean, like
Hmm.
you might think you want to feed them fresh and you may believe with every piece of you that it's the best thing, but if you can't keep it up in a balanced and complete way,
Yep.
it doesn't matter if it's the best way. It's not going to happen. So you have to also do what they're going to eat, you
Yes.
know.
So yeah,
You
the
said,
pet has to eat it is one of
right.
the big things, having to be comfortable. One of the things we had issues with when I was a resident, at least, is when you travel. Sometimes it's really, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it. There's definitely ways to do it, but people got pretty creative. So not the convenience is the big selling point, but it's definitely a nice perk to
Mm-hmm.
have nice, stable options. So we would, even when we had homemade recipes, we'd often give them a a commercial option that was similar in profile if we could, just for reasons like that, or if they couldn't get a hold of an ingredient or something like that. Or maybe they decided, oh gosh, this is a lot of work. I want to do half and half, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Well, and I think like what I like about the way that you kind of go about it and what I feel like you're saying is like there is no one right way. There is a
Mm-mm.
way that's right for each pet. There's a way that's going to be right for the owner that's involved, and you just want to make sure that you're touching on all those points that you kind of said when you're going into feeding a diet. And just making sure that it's a reputable one, clearly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish I could say there was one best diet, but yeah,
Me
it's
too.
Tell us after the podcast is over. It's cool. I got you. So it's fine. No, it's got a secret actually. No, I think that's just really. I think it's such a tough thing because even like for non-specialists trying to give the best diet recommendation, it is hard, and we all want to. Everything's so focused right now in the human industry, like taking care of ourselves and being natural, organic. You hear all these buzzwords, and you're like, I don't even know where to start. We've talked a little previously, thanks to Sam, a few previous posts or guests about wasabi guidelines. Those are a great place to start, but it's tough, man. I even second guess when I feed my dog now half the time. So I work in the industry.
Yeah.
And there's so many choices. I think that's the hardest part too, is that there's a lot of choices.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the things I like to tell at least veterinarians is have some things you're familiar with too. Maybe you have this group of diets you like for one disease, you like this diet for puppies, and that way you're but also know what else is out there, but that way you're super familiar with it. You've seen how well it works. You can talk to owners about it. Having, favorites for some things is definitely useful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we are all somewhat a little bit going to give recommendations based on what we've seen work in our hands. And I always
Oh,
tell people,
absolutely.
this is what I've seen, but that doesn't, and there's too many things for me to know all of them. So, and I'll usually tell people, like, if there's something you feel really strongly about trying, let me know. I'll look into it. I'm willing to look and to learn so that the next person that asks me about that, but this is what I know about here. But man, I mean, like, I can't even tell you how much we appreciate the fact that you've come to like sort of dispel some of these rumors and like talk about this in such a like helpful way and an accessible way, because this is one of the hardest conversations that we have, and people walk into pet stores and are like super
Oh yeah.
there's just so many options, and it's nice to know that kibble can be a really good, really healthy, not like convenience happens to be a great part of it, but it's not actually the biggest selling point, which
No, it's
I
the Wonder
really
Nuggets.
appreciate. Yeah.
But
Exactly.
honestly,
Well, I mean, I feel like, what did you say?
really gotta coin that, like market
Yeah,
that trainer.
you do. With your face.
God.
Oh, holding your kitties.
Oh, there we go. As they're snarfing down their kibbles.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. I mean, I could probably ask you a million questions for the next 2 hours, but that's not really fair to you. So thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate your time, and we really loved having you on the podcast. I guess, can you, with working at Hills, do you ever do any personal consultation still, or is that not something that you do?
I don't right now. I don't honestly have the bandwidth to
Yeah.
do that.
Right.
Um, I'm pretty busy, but I know people that do work in industry and do consults on the side, so it's definitely possible.
That's
It's
what
just
it
not something that I'm capable of doing
Yeah.
right now.
Totally fair. No problem. I totally
I
get it.
wish. I wish. I feel like sometimes I'm like, I could just answer these, but yeah,
Yeah.
I still answer questions for friends all the time, so
Right. Sure.
that
Well,
gets
you're
me
a
in there. So,
veterinarian. You'll be doing that no matter what.
oh yeah.
Text messages, your
Oh, absolutely.
second cousin 3 times removed.
Not that bad. No, I usually get resident mates and intern mates and things like that. Intern directors.
This is awkward.
Well, we really appreciate it. You've just been so wonderful and really generous with your time. So thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me. This has been wonderful.
Yeah,
Great.
we really appreciate it. Well, this has been the Pause It Podcast. Thank you everyone for listening.